was horrifying, actually, the very first time walking into the war rooms, because I'd been working upstairs in a much bigger secretariat, and none of us really knew where anybody else worked. I knew General Ismay's office was on the same floor, and the pay office where we went on Friday to get our £2 10 shillings in a tiny little brown envelope. And then suddenly somebody said, you and you and you will go downstairs tomorrow. Well, we didn't know what downstairs was. We didn't know there was a downstairs, because people just worked in their own offices. And so we went down the steps, and we approached this door, and we couldn't get in. And then we discovered we had to press a button, and when the door opened, there were 2 Marines in full uniform. So I thought, it's very odd. What's happening here? So yes, it was quite scarifying, really. Luckily, the supervisor who'd been on our shift, came with us, so she obviously knew what she was about. And we joined the Joint Planning Secretariat. So there were just about 8 or 12 of us, a very small group from upstairs had come downstairs. And I suppose the people we were responsible to were the 3 senior Navy, Army and RAF officers. And they presumably were the people who sent us the work. But, in wartime, in that sort of situation, the work comes into the supervisor and she gives it out, or he gives it, she in those days, gives it out, and then you give it back to her, and you've no idea where it's come from, and probably haven't got much idea of what the content is either, because you just have to type it and get it right and get it checked by a neighbour or with somebody and then hand it back. And we signed on and we went to work, and we did shifts from 8 till 4 on the day shift and 2 till 9 the next day. And about 3 times a fortnight we went in at 3 on the 2 to 9 day and worked right through for 24 hours. So it was a big change from upstairs. The washrooms were still on the first floor, so we had to be let out to go to the washrooms. And we went to a canteen, I think, in the Treasury for meals. And there were very strict timetables. If you took too long in the washroom or they thought you'd taken too long, there was sort of a lot of questions when you got back, why you'd been so long and what had you been doing. Quite embarrassing in a way, but the same with meals. We had specific time. I don't know whether it was half an hour or 3/4 of an hour, but it wasn't very long. Just time to go and get a meal and then come back to work. And again, going home, mostly we got off on time, but certainly on the 24-hour shift, we slept down here in bunks, but we couldn't go to bed, obviously, till work was finished. I don't think we ever worked right through the night. I think we probably worked quite late, 1 or 2 in the morning, and we'd have to be up again at 7. But provision was made for us to sleep. Very primitive, very hard, wooden bunks. Well, we saw him quite a lot, of course, because the corridors were all used by the same people. I just said, "Good morning, Mr. Churchill," or "Good morning, Prime Minister." And he'd always stop and speak. Not stop for long, perhaps it was just a passing good morning, afternoon, how are you? Sometimes if there'd been a raid, he'd ask if we'd been affected or how our family were. He was always very affable. I think he liked having civilians around him, whether it took the pressure off a bit, because he was a man of great emotions, and I think it must have been a tremendous strain with those chiefs of staff who sit, as you probably know, in the cabinet room. He sits in his chair and they sit bang in front of him here, like a sort of blockade almost. He had a room turned into a kind of amateur cinematograph, and occasionally he'd ask us to join him. He loved watching films. And so one night some of us thought we would. Must have been gone 12, and so we really would rather have gone to bed. However, we sat in this room and waited and shuffled about a bit, and then all of a sudden the door burst open and in came Churchill in his pyjamas and dressing gown, a cigar in one hand, a glass of drink in the other, and he just shouted out from the back, "Win is here, let it roll." And I can't remember what the film was about, but I think he had a good sense of humour, really. And he needed it, of course, because he had some very dark days.